Thanks for returning to the Process Improvement Practitioner Show for Episode 5, Why Process Mapping. Our purpose here is to enable you, the problem solver, to be able to solve business problems through change. As always, please feel free to provide feedback and discuss these ideas on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you find this content. As I progress with this living experiment, I welcome the opportunity to improve it based on your feedback. So a bit of recap, in case you missed it, I started this podcast with 3 episodes talking about the process improvement leader's state of mind. I discussed the traits of the successful change leader as well as the mindset. Then I talked about things that will derail the continuous improvement leader and lead them astray. So I'm starting from the inside of you and the process improvement practitioner, and then working our way outside. So then that leads us to process mapping. First off, I love process mapping. Second, I believe that process maps are the language and the guide that we use to do almost everything else in process improvement. The topic is so important and close to my heart, I'm splitting this content up into 3 pieces. First, we will cover why process mapping is essential to process improvement. Then we will seek to convince you on why you need a professional to help you with process mapping. And then finally, I will discuss how to process map. Each of these podcast episodes will have a visual component to them. Certainly this one will. So you may want to watch this on the Dutch Cedar Consulting YouTube channel. Dutch like Pennsylvania Dutch, Cedar like the chest that smells really good, and consulting like the guys who cost a lot and do less. For listeners, I will do my best to paint a picture for you. We can't do a lot of improvement without first having an accurate view of what is happening. What are we even talking about? Mr. Customer, what exactly do you think is broken here? Can you show me? What do you do? What value do you create? Who are the customers? Who are the suppliers? What are the inputs and outputs? Is there a current state process map? I think a process map is the first element of doing an improvement because we simply have to understand what are we talking about here. This may sound obvious, and if you feel that way, I'm really glad, because to a lot of people, it's not obvious. I've been in the meetings where the subject matter experts have gone round and round arguing about the process without a common understanding of what they're even talking about. And that's why I say the process map is the language that we speak. In order to understand each other, we must be speaking the same language. It is our foundation. In order to drive improvement, we first have to understand that which we seek to improve. And we must do that without making assumptions, and that most definitely includes the people who are closest to it. Their view may be very well may be micro in nature. Their focus may be more on procedure than process, meaning they spend their day-to-day teaching and leading their teams on how to do something versus the concern about what they're doing or why they're doing it, let alone what the customer expectations are and how well we are achieving those. Their focus may well be more on procedural steps and keystrokes and input codes versus who is getting the output they're creating and does it meet their needs downstream. That's not where we want to be, and we are going to fix that. So not only is a process map the language we need to speak in order to drive improvement, but the presence or absence of a process map will speak volumes about the readiness of the team for change, not to mention the map's accuracy. I like to say that there are 4 versions of any process: what the process map says is happening, what the process owner says is happening, what the process doers say is happening, and finally, what is actually happening. This is 100% true. I've done enough process mapping to see this play out. The good news is that this is all opportunity for you. Folks, this is low-hanging fruit. By documenting the process, we are going to realign these 4 perspectives into one and hopefully keep them aligned through ownership and maintenance processes. Before we continue, let's define what I'm talking about when it comes to a process map. Here are the elements, more or less, and without going into the how of a process map. The map will start with a customer and ends with a customer. And remember, the customers are internal as well as external. You use a start shape to show where all this fun begins, and maybe some description if it's useful. So this example here I got on the screen, we have our start shape, and I've put a little note in there, and it looks like the process starts with the sales support specialist. So in this case, it's probably an internal customer. Arrows connect the shapes, and they only go in one direction, so obviously you can't have a bi-directional arrow, so we're going from this place to this place. Process steps contain a noun and a verb. Right? Send message, send transfer, give transfer, noun and a verb. Diamonds show where decisions occur or where the flow splits based on some business rules. So in this case, we have a yes or no decision. The map's going to include swim lanes, which we kind of mentioned before. The elements of the process must be in a swim lane, which means that role is responsible for that element. So in this case here, the sales support specialist is the one doing this process step. And that this means that every element on the process map must be owned by someone. Note that swim lanes ought to contain a role, but not a specific person's name. So in this example, right, we don't want any. We're striving to eliminate process heroes, right, from our processes. So these should not be Bob or Jane or whoever. These should be based on a role that's been defined. If your process requires additional paper, and it probably will, you can use what's called an off-page connector to show that this process here continues on to another page. And you can also use on-page connectors. In this case, the circles with the A. You can use on-page connectors to show how two shapes connect without making a line that goes across all these boxes. So just to keep it neat, instead of having a line going all the way around, you can just kind of go here and then it warps you back to here. And really, to that point, a process map is legible and clear, and it conveys credibility and honors the investment of time that was put forth by you and all the subject matter experts that gave you the information to build it. And then once the process map is complete, you put an end shape, which I do not have here, but in this notation style, it's the same shape. This process is continuing on to another page, which we will not go into. The process map is also written at an appropriate and consistent level. What level is that? This is a tricky topic, so I will leave that for now, and we'll talk about it in 2 more episodes from now. And sometimes I will include a special shape, this one here, that really, it formally is called a predefined process, or in Visio here is called a sub-process. You can really call that a rabbit hole shape. And I use these to avoid going down into a rabbit hole. These can be used to show where there are processes that are out of scope, but are still part of our process and have to be included. Governmental and other external processes are good examples of that. You also may want to number your shapes so additional deliverables can refer back to these shapes. So this example here, I don't have numbers here, but once your map is 95% complete, you can kind of come back through here and number it. And that way you can talk about number 2, number 4, number whatever. I also like clear titles, and I like dates. So go to the top here. I've got title of the process, example process. I've got it that it's current state. My favorite word is draft. I have a date on it. And also, so I definitely like including the word draft by the date or the title. And I also like to include text boxes with notes. So we have an example of a footnote. We have a little more detail, so we put a little asterisk, and we can kind of bring that note down here. Notes down here you can put in here to talk about the process in general. And then maybe you need something in red that kind of calls out, okay, this is something that, because this is a draft map, this is our draft for now, but we need to get rid of these red messages that are talking about probably additional questions or additional work that we need to dig into. Note that the process map that we are talking about today is not a value stream map. Here's an example here. Those go into more detail about process times, cycle times, handle times, inventory, and really can involve a lot more shapes. I see those as a more detailed version of a process map, and we will save those for another day. Also, a process map is not a flowchart. Flowcharts use a few more shapes and can be more technical, decision-oriented, or procedural in nature. Flowcharts don't show the different players in the process like a swim lane process map does. As we talk about the value a process map brings, these elements are all going to come into focus. And also note that a process map doesn't use that many shapes. There's no need to fully utilize the Visio shape library. Remember that we want clarity. We want to democratize the information. Using a wide library of shapes like emojis in your text messages is not necessary and drives confusion and a lack of clarity, the very problems that we're trying to solve here. The great thing about process mapping is that you're going to drive pretty immediate value for your process owner. Perhaps this is something that has been on his or her to-do list, but given the time commitment or other roadblocks, it just doesn't get done. Alternatively, your process owner may strangely not be process-oriented, but perhaps procedure-oriented. And again, he or she is not given this much thought. Maybe they grew up in the process and figure they know it better than anybody else, so what's the point? Again, this is where the 4 versions of a process come into play, and weaknesses can come in and begin to erode performance. So how does the exercise of collecting a process map illustrate what's going on in this troubled organization? And we know they're troubled because they called us in for help, right? First, let's talk about what collecting the process map entails. We will go into more detail on the how of process map collection in another episode, but to do this correctly, we will need to have subject matter experts in a room or on a virtual session available to answer questions about what the process is. This can be done with several in the room at the same time or in one-off meetings. The facilitator, you, will ask questions and capture information. This process often spans across multiple sessions depending on the complexity of the process, so this will be a time commitment. There will be some back and forth as you work through open questions, iterations of the map. Then you will finalize the map and ask for their sign-off or approval, and once it's signed off by the experts, it's complete. In order to do this, you will need a lot of support in terms of time and attention from the right people. The level of support you receive will tell you volumes about the organization's interest in changing for the better. They may have called you in to make things better, but that doesn't mean they want to change. How many people go to the doctor for an ailment or a physical and the doctor tells you, hey, you really need to lose some weight, and on the way home you stop at McDonald's for a Shamrock Shake? I guess that's only me. Okay, fine. This mapping exercise will tell you if you have enough support to get the right people in the room. Do the right people show up? Are they knowledgeable? Are they influence leaders in the organization? Then once you've got them, are they engaged? Are they paying attention or are they multitasking? Do they care about this effort? Also, if you have multiple experts there, which is generally recommended, are they agreeing or are they arguing? Do they know their own process? Another tell is whether your experts are forthcoming with information or are they curating what they tell you so they don't get in trouble or make someone look bad. Are they telling you what the process is supposed to be instead of what it actually is? As you delve into asking what happens next, are your experts becoming defensive? Finally, as you collect information, are your experts surprised at what's uncovered? Are you finding anything that they were not aware of? This effect obviously comes into play when you have multiple people in the room who are all aware of the same process but in different ways. And hopefully as you begin producing this deliverable, you are starting to see support building for this effort. Not only are people being heard, after all, we all want to be heard, but hopefully you're uncovering the proverbial golden nuggets of improvement opportunity. As a process improvement consultant, you are always aiming to build support for your work. If support is waning, you may need to check your approach to make sure that you're being respectful and are creating value. But that again goes to the how, and we will talk about that in an upcoming episode, 2 episodes from now. My final point on the topic of why we make a process map is that this tool is the language we will all speak as we drive improvements. We want to be very effective as outside resources brought into a busy and perhaps broken operation, so there's no time to lose. We need to earn our keep and start showing value as soon as possible. As we uncover the process by putting knowledge to paper, we will see some things pop up. The proverbial golden nuggets, the aha moments, are what you hope to find. Be ready to capture gaps in the process, things that ought to be done a certain way that aren't. They could be in the form of work that should be happening that isn't, or work that doesn't need to be done but is still happening. Is one person printing something before handing the item to the next person who promptly throws that paper away? Are we unnecessarily transporting work? This is where the process improvement later trait of having an eye for waste comes in handy. When you uncover something like this, ask a non-threatening question about it and listen. Hey, just curious, I see you're printing a copy of the invoice before handing the work off, but in the next step, nothing was done with it. Also, keep your eyes out for risks. Are we doing things in a way that negatively impacts operational risk? Are there process steps that are inherently risky or error-prone? Are we doing a lot of handwriting or other error-prone types of processing? Are we doing anything unsafe? As these gems come up, be sure to have a parking lot and capture what was said and who said it. Finally, as you map out the process, not just the steps, the decisions, but the players and the required handoffs, does it seem overly complicated? As we map this all out, does it seem like it's just a lot of work? Does it seem like it should be simpler? As you visually lay out this with your subject matter experts, let your map breathe like a fine wine. As your experts look at this thing, are they a bit taken aback at all the processing? No need to beat them up over this, but just let this sit with them and see what they think. At the end of a session, when everyone is good and beat down, maybe make an observation like, wow, this is pretty complicated, and just see where that goes. Again, the process map is the language of process improvement. With this tool, we can make process changes. We can see some pretty obvious things like too many handoffs between processors, or extra work, or just simply too many people involved in a process. We can easily see steps that aren't being used downstream. Some of the changes can be made while the process is being mapped as just do it's. Other opportunities should go on the enhancement list with a priority, an amount of effort, expected benefit, and an owner. In a greater sense, we can revisit the process participants. It is axiomatic that each time there is a handoff between parties, there is risk and there is usually waiting time. Do we have too many people involved in this process? Can we minimize handoffs? Also, are their roles different based on what location you're talking about? I've seen a case where at location A, or plant A, this role does steps 1, 2, and 3, but at plant B, that person or that role does 1, 2, and 4. As you try to process map that, you're going to know it's obviously more complicated than it needs to be, and really in the end we should strive to standardize that role across the board whenever possible. The finished process map is also a great way to have a conversation about key metrics. Processes that are in trouble are often missing the key descriptive information that tells us how the process is doing in the eyes of the customer. Are we measuring time in a way that is meaningful to a customer? Are we measuring defects that make it to a customer? An example of this is measuring the handle times of your processors, but not the end-to-end time from customer request to the customer's actual fulfillment of that request. If we don't have the right metrics in place, we can use the map to drop in the sensors in the key parts of the process so we understand what's happening. Finally, the process map is a prerequisite if you want to do a failure mode effects analysis on your process. This is a tool that can be used on a reasonably stable process to drill into where process risks exist. This is like a therapy session for your process. What can go wrong? What happens if it goes wrong? How detectable is it when things go wrong? How preventable is it? And then how bad do things get when they go bad? Done correctly, this is a pretty extensive analysis and well worth it. The FMEA is another one of my favorite tools because it can debunk some risks and raise others that we never even thought about. And again, more on that tool in a later episode. So let's wrap up. Today we talked about why you should develop a process map for the process you are seeking to improve. Naturally, we need to define what we are working on, and the map does that very well. When no map exists, it puts everyone on the same page by eliminating all the visions of what people think the process is and replaces it with what actually is. This is especially helpful for customers who depend on this process, as well as suppliers to the process. If you work in a regulated industry, your risk and compliance people will love you for mapping this all out. As you charge ahead with likely the first deliverable of your process improvement engagement, and perhaps the first leap of faith that your customer is putting into you, you're going to be able to suss out what level of support you're getting, and as well as what kind of cultural issues you may be facing, from enthusiastic support to apathy or even active resistance. Finally, as I said before, the process map is the language and foundation for improvement. Deriving the map itself will most likely lead to several opportunities outright and will serve you as you drive future improvement. Hopefully you're convinced, and you will join me in the next episode when we talk about the advantages of hiring a process mapping pro to drive out this deliverable. If you're the pro, then these are going to be your talking points as you seek to win engagements. If you're a process owner, then it's a shameless commercial to hire me or someone like me. And then after that episode, we will talk about how to do process mapping. So first we will do the commercial, and then I will give away all my trade secrets. So you don't have to hire me. Thanks again for tuning in. I welcome your feedback. Message me via dutchcedar.com. I welcome constructive conversations so that we can all get better at this craft. We are all learning together, and as always, keep moving onwards and upwards.